Why shop a mattress store when you can shop Big Sandy's Superstore? Shop and compare the largest selection of the...
I gotta keep my eye on the tiger.
Sumo the Opera is a great show about perseverance. We sort of live this kind of prophetic life here. You know, it's like we have to tell stories, and when we start to tell stories, it seems like we inevitably go through the circumstances that are in the stories. And, you know, so this story, we wanted to do a show on perseverance. And of course, this show, Sumo the Opera, went through a lot of the company's most difficult periods of time and lots of change and transition. And so it just seemed like every once in a while through the making of the show, we'd look at each other and like, you know, well, we've got to keep on keeping on, you know, because that's what this show's about, and we're going to live it all the way to the end. The production portion of the show was done in a little bit less than 2 months, which is incredibly fast. Previously, the most animators that have ever worked on a VeggieTale was the Easter Carol, when we had 19 animators working on it, which was more animators than actually worked on the feature film Jonah. This one kind of even shattered that record, and Sumo had 26 animators working on it.
If you want to know who we are wrestlers of Japan.
Sumo was a challenge, but it was a fun, rewarding challenge. We covered so much musical ground in there, but that's one of the things I love about getting to write these sorts of shows. I mean, I wrote Irish music, German music, Japanese music, traditional orchestral scoring, ragtime, 80s rock and roll.
When I was writing the countertop for Sumo, it was just after Christmas, and my wife and I had bought our daughter a little puppet theater. We'd go down at night and she'd give us little puppet shows, you know, with these little finger puppets that we got. And I just loved that idea. And so I thought, when we started working through how the theme of perseverance would play out and how we would structure the countertop, you know, it worked really well for Larry to be away, actually having this phone conversation with Bob about, you know, trying to go to this kids event. We thought it'd be great for, you know, somebody to stand in for Larry. So we, you know, came up with this finger puppet or hand puppet of that Khalil would do the voice for, because I love Khalil's voice, and Tim Hodge just does such a great job with it. Going Up was was about, taking this piano up a giant hill. And Todd Carter and I worked on that. It was a silent film, really. There was no dialogue in the whole thing. So Todd did a lot of work just developing the story as a visual story. We had talked about the Laurel and Hardy episode where they actually took a piano up a hill and delivered it. And we wanted to kind of put a little bit of a twist on that and actually turn that into the Three Stooges.
And it was an interesting segment to do all the way through animation, because everybody's like, are we going to be able to pull this off? We storyboarded, we believed in it, but it's like, it's still silent. We're wondering, is it going to pay off? Is it going to play? And we got all the way through animation. We're still looking at that. We're looking at the animation looks great. The lighting looks great. It's all beautiful. And we're still going, is this really going to work? And then we put Kurt's music to it and the sound effects, and we all looked at it and just went, yeah, it works really well.
And then in the going up segment, we had the ragtime piano. I'd enhance that with some drums and some bass. But then we needed a different element for whenever we saw the words on the screen. The piano must go up. So I took, kind of reminiscent of Peanuts, Charlie Brown's teacher, took my trumpet and my trombone and used a mute, wah, 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 wah. The piano must go up.
I had actually been reading a series of books on church history. Before I started reading these books, there was just so much about church history that I didn't know. So for me, I was really excited about, a lot of the stories I was reading, and thought it'd be a really good opportunity to tell one of those stories, the story of St. Patrick, who really was the first missionary. He was the first person to take the gospel outside of what was thought to be the civilized world, outside of the Roman Empire. We just wanted to do that in a very silly sort of, VeggieTales way, or in kind of a fractured fairy tale almost sort of fashion.
When we decided that we wanted to do the story of St. Patrick, we looked at our options, and first of all, we didn't want to turn him into a vegetable, but the idea of doing him as a human in 3D wasn't real appealing either, because that's actually a really difficult thing to do, and it usually doesn't turn out so well. That's why a lot of times you'll see in 3D, people do toys, or they do fish, or, insects, because those things really translate well into 3D. So in deciding that we didn't want to do him as a vegetable and we didn't want to do it as a human in 3D, that's how we kind of stumbled onto this idea of doing it as this new style. With two-dimensional traditional animation, you take lots of different drawings and you put them all together, and it creates the illusion of movement. And then with three-dimensional animation, like VeggieTales, you've got characters that you don't have to redraw every time. You just kind of move them around the screen, and the computer figures out what happens in between. This show was kind of a combination of both. Using the program called After Effects, the computer is actually able to take these few drawings that we did. We would do pieces of artwork for each character, and then I would be able to move them around.
St. Patrick, we had, I think, about 3 different locations, 3 different countries. What we wanted to do is we wanted to create for each individual location a different color palette, a different look entirely. For Ireland, everything is influenced by green. When you go to Britain, everything is influenced by the colors of the British flag. Then you go to France, and for some reason France is blue.
This is simply a metaphor.
I had sat down to write a song, and I had no idea where I was going with it, but the hook that came into my mind was weather, 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 whether you like it or not. Weather, 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 weather is cold, warm, and hot. And I loved the sound of that. And then from there, once that hook entered my mind, I just thought, it's just a really fun, it'd be really fun to take that and turn it into kind of a fun grammar lesson.
I'm a pronoun, they're a pronoun, he's a pronoun, she's a pronoun. Would you like to be a pronoun too?
Then the main segment of the show is, of course, Sumo of the Opera, which is our Rocky parody.
The first time I read the Sumo script, I was just like, this could be a really interesting show. This could be a really fun show. So I got really excited about it. I had just gone from working on, Snoodle show. So I'm thinking Dr. Seuss, and I get thrown from this kind of crazy, whimsical Snoodle world into like the Japanese culture. This is one of the pieces of concept art that I worked on. This is the tiger bike. And the script says, okay, the tiger bike is the thing that everybody's after. It's supposed to be the big incentive for winning this whole thing. And I'm like, well, it's got to look really cool. I actually thought, well, it would be really cool if the wheels were held on like by paws, and the entire bike was an actual tiger and had a big tail that kind of went out the back. I'm like, that's something I want to ride.
A tiger bike.
With Sumo at first, I wasn't sure musically what direction I wanted to go. The traditional Gilbert and Sullivan musical used a standard orchestra. Ironically, they didn't use any Japanese Oriental sounding instruments in their orchestration, but we wanted to bring that element in. So I started with a traditional orchestra and then just pulled together all of these different Japanese and Oriental instruments, lots of bells and chimes and wood blocks and stringed instruments, so we definitely get a feel of the Orient.
I've got to keep my eye on the tiger.
It was fun to tip our hat to some of the old classic movies that deal with sports and training and preparing for a fight, and whatever that is, whether it's Karate Kid or Rocky or you name it. Every movie like that has to break into a musical montage as the characters getting ready for something and they're preparing. So we did the same thing with that, brought in some 80s rock and roll, that style, to give it a classic feel and reminiscent to us adults.
The company is a lot smaller. We do a lot more now with a lot fewer people. But the people that are here and that are working now are some of the finest people I know, and they work so incredibly hard to make these shows, touching, beautiful, meaningful, and funny. It warms my heart to work with them because they care so much about getting the story across and making sure that that it's as good as it can possibly be, as funny as it can be, entertaining, and yet really get a message across.
Well, we decided to give Larry, a poofy hairdo and eyeglasses. We wanted him to look very teacherly, and a friend of mine named Hans, who's actually a music teacher, sort of was the inspiration behind Larry's look. And so I don't think I've told Hans that yet, so I think I'll probably need to mention that to him. but yeah, we just thought it'd be kind of fun to have him kind of come out looking like a teacher. And in my mind, Hans is the teacher, he's the typical teacher, and so that's why we went that route with Larry. All of the bus routes that Larry takes are actual Chicago City Street bus routes. So if you actually listen to all those and go and get a CTA map, Chicago Transportation Authority map, you can find your way to a neighborhood. So it's pretty funny.
If you look where Maywin pushes the cradle off screen, you can see a little square of pink behind him when he moves to the side. That's actually his neck, because I'd forgotten to attach his neck to his body, so when he moves you actually see that behind him, which hopefully most people won't notice, but it's there. One of my favorite shots in the whole segment is the shot of St. Patrick preaching, and in the first part there's only a few people standing around, and the camera begins to pull out and it cross dissolves from the hills to a town to a field with a wall, and as the camera pulls back and as we go from one place to another, you see that St. Patrick's crowd is actually building and more people are hearing his message of God's love. I think that's a really effective visual way to communicate how we can tell people about God. But it turns out it's also kind of a joke in there too, because each of those people that's standing around Patrick, as they gather around, those are all people that work here at Big Idea. We've got our concept artists, and then Tim Hodge and Mike Naraki, who are our directors, and I'm in there. I'm the blonde guy down in the front. And Andy Yowsey, who's our production coordinator, he's actually over there on the side, leaning on the stick. And the tall, skinny guy who's up in the corner with the dark hair, that's actually Mike Naraki. He was the director of St. Patrick and the whole sumo show, but he's also the voice of Larry the Cucumber.
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again. If you need help, hang up and then dial your operator.